Live from the AM 860 KPAM studios, it's Terry Boyd's World. This is the morning show for people looking to hear about the biggest news stories of the day, along with the lighter side of what's happening in our world. If it's happening in your world, it's happening in ours. Live and local, it's Common Sense Radio. AM 860 KPAM and KPAM.com.
10:06, we're going to check in with Jim Redden from the Portland Tribune here momentarily. You can always hit us up, email tboyd@kpam.com. Robert in Beaverton wrote to us, hey, Terry and Matt, just want to point out that the 7-Eleven on Murray, and I think it's Hawken, has a decent-sized RC helicopter sitting up there for sale. Decent-sized as in hold out your arms, and it's about that long. It costs $100. I don't think many people are going to go in there on an impulse buy. But I thought about purchasing it a few times. I wouldn't intentionally try to fly it into your head, though.
Well, that's nice, Robert.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. I don't want anybody headhunting me. That's for sure. And if you missed that conversation, we're just talking about there is a whole new set of nerds out there. And I only say it as nerds because there's a lot of kids are starting to buy these drones and using it for things that teenage boys would use it for.
They also use them, too. I know a guy who does a business. He does videos about golf courses. So he'll go out to your golf course with his remote control craft and a camera and produce these promotional videos for golf courses.
That's cool. I've seen that. Do you know this guy like you know the guy from Lone Star?
Yeah, pretty much.
just asking. I had to.
It's one of my many imaginary friends.
Whatever gets you through the day.
Yeah, it's all good. Any time now, we are going to be able to catch up with Lone Star, we think. I don't know. Jim told us that he might be in a meeting today, so we'll get a hold of Jim Redden whenever we can. We do have a microphone that we've been following all day down at the Street Fee Public Forum. We've been watching it streaming online. They had hoped to have it wrapped up at 9:30 today. I don't know if it's wrapped up yet, but let's just go to the microphone real quick.
I suggest you wipe that stupid smile off your face before I come over there and smack it off. You feeling strong, my friend? Call me Elf one more time. He's an angry elf.
Things not going well. You're getting worried.
A little out of hand there.
Matt was worried. Did Alicia get the edit there? Because then it gets really salty, the language from Elf. Tomorrow, are you going to try to sneak down to the forum tomorrow night, just as for homeowners?
No.
You're not going to go?
I am not.
I thought it might just be entertaining. I really did. I thought it would be fun to go down there. I happen to like Charlie Hales as a person. I don't agree with him on a lot of what he thinks is right and what is wrong. And until somebody steps up and just says, hey, look, we're in this deal because we foolishly spent money. Remember, Charlie was part of a lot of things that have happened in the past long before he became mayor. And I'm not saying he's personally responsible for it, but lots of money was just spent foolishly, for lack of a better term, and they didn't take care of the roads. Now it's supposed to be our crisis and our emergency. And quite frankly, some of the arrogance about if you don't like it, you can vote it out, I think they're rethinking that. That's why they're having these town hall meetings. Mm-hmm. It was really easy to, stick your chest out and make that statement, and then all of a sudden your phone starts blowing up and going, why don't you leave now? Right? Like one of those kind of things. Then you start to reconsider, hey, I actually like the position I have. Maybe I can find another solution here, because the solution isn't always just going out and digging into everybody's pocket. Sometimes you have to dig into your own pocket, which means you got to tighten your own budget. That's all I'm saying on that one. So it doesn't look like we're going to catch up with Jim Redden. There are some great stories, though, in the Portland Tribune today. An in-depth story about the shooter, Reynolds High School shooter, and their family and the dynamics that were going on and whether they will or will not be charged. Kind of talked about this with Bernie Giusto yesterday, the former Multnomah County sheriff. He's pretty adamant about getting something going called Emilio's Law. Mm-hmm. It'll have a lot of uphill fight in front of it, but I'm with him. I think it's fair. I don't think it's unreasonable. There's also a great article about how polluted our drinking water is. If you're a person who doesn't buy the bottled water and you go with the tap water, you might want to read this article.
Well, most of the bottled water's tap water somewhere.
No, it comes from the mountains of
Fiji?
Scio.
Scio.
Scioto, run for the mountains of Scioto.
That's your go-to place.
I love Scioto, man. It's one of those things where you just got to make your own decisions on what you think. I found the most interesting article, the millions of dollars that are in play right now on sidewalk repair. And maybe because it hits home with me. Because when we built our house 10 years ago, I live in Oregon City. The neighborhood I live in, the city came through and made everybody put these stupid maple trees between the sidewalk and the curb. And they made every house had to have them so many feet. And I asked them, begged them, said, that's going to create a lot of problems. The roots are going to come up underneath the sidewalk. The sidewalks are going to get lifted. Whose responsibility is that? Oh, well, it's yours. Well, if it's mine, then I don't want the damn trees there. Mm-hmm. I remember saying it, and I said I'll put in any other kind of shrub. I just don't want a maple tree that's going to have those deep roots that are going to try to go and chase water to where your house is, so they go underneath the sidewalk, then they lift the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Everyone has to have it. A couple of my neighbors cut them down, and they got huge fines.
I bet.
Huge fines for doing it. So now, guess what? The sidewalks in front of my house, yeah, they're lifting.
Yeah. The sidewalks in front of my house are that way, too, in my neighborhood.
And it's just like, it's just busy work. I don't need the busy work. And if you don't take care of it, they'll just send somebody in, and then you get hit with a really big bill. There's some people in Portland that have been getting ridiculous charges for repairing like one 10-foot section of sidewalk. 15, 20 grand. Trust me, it doesn't cost 15 or 20
How much
grand.
Does it?
It shouldn't cost you more than, well, it depends on who you hire. If you do it yourself, you could probably do it for under $500.
Huh.
But you got to have some knowledge, you got to have some know-how, and you better do it right because there's always liability in there.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact cost of concrete. It's been a long time since I've done it. I'm sure it's expensive like everything else. And it's not $15,000 expensive. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that much. So Thursday, we will check in with Jim Redden, the real Jim Redden, on Thursday. By the way, Jim Redden every week is brought to you by the University of Portland-Pamplin School of Business, offering 4 innovative master's programs, 2 locations. For info requests at business.up.edu. We have barely scratched the surface of things today. Match.com, if you're a single person and you use Match.com, they have a deal for you that will only cost you $5,000. I'll tell you what it is next here on AM 860 KPAM. (10:18) AM 860 KPAM, Terry Boyd's World. Matt and I were just talking about those DirecTV commercials with the puppets with the strings, no strings.
They're creepy.
I think they're funny, man. There's another. I saw a new one, and maybe it's only on the East Coast right now. I haven't seen it here so far. I try to skip by commercials, but
well, that's a first for you.
Yeah,
I've been doing that for 10 years.
His because it's the guy, right, with the string puppet guy. He's got the string puppet wife.
Yeah,
and she's always trying
cables, right? Because they talk about no cables.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no. So you're not attached anywhere, and you were just saying how creepy they are. I think they're funny, man. But there was one where I just saw it this weekend when I was back in Ohio, where her dad, like, they're standing there, and he's talking to his wife, and the guy just plays it perfectly, and all of a sudden the dad's like, "Oh, really? Don't like my wires? Don't like my wires?" He takes off his shirt, and he's got the old man T-shirt on. He's trying to fight him. Yeah, puppet fighter. It's pretty funny, man. I mean, it's a really creative set of commercials. But you're right, they are creepy. I think what's creepy is when she's trying to flirt with him. Because, yeah, it's kind of jazzy, right? It's just so silly.
The dude is married to a puppet,
right? And he's got a puppet baby. Yeah. So what does that make him? Does that make him a well, I can't say it. You know what I was thinking. Yeah. He's got a puppet wife and a puppet boy. That's a next level wrong Pinocchio right there. Is what that is. It's just so wrong. Oh, I did get that information you wanted to know about. It's going to be up on Labor Day on the Lifetime network, Lifetime channel, Matt. That's the unauthorized Saved by the Bell story.
You're a jerk. You're such a jerk. You know what's funny, though? I actually wouldn't mind seeing that.
Because you grew up with it, right?
Yeah, but I think it would be interesting because some of the stuff that I've heard that went on behind the scenes is pretty salacious.
Yeah, but they're not going to show any of that, not on Lifetime channel.
Well, they're not going to they're going to talk about it. They're going
Are you sure? Because some of that stuff is way over the top. Screech was in that show, right?
Yeah.
It's after my time.
Dustin Diamond.
Yeah, it's after my time.
Yeah, I think that they'll show a lot. They're not going to show everything actually happening of what they did. It's not like they had cameras there to be able to pick that up.
So this is a BLD, big letdown of the salacious story on Labor Day weekend. See, if it was on HBO or Showtime, I'd go, oh, I bet they're going to tell the real story. They're not going to tell the dumbed down story.
Why can't they tell the story though? They can still tell the story.
Well, all the stuff that I read about that deal and was too salacious for regular TV. That's what made it interesting.
Well, it's cable, though.
Well, yeah. I don't know.
They'll be able to tell the story. They're not going to be able to show the story.
Showing and telling are two different things.
Yes, I understand that.
I was going to go somewhere else with that, and I just went, well, no, I won't. I don't want to get in trouble today. I don't want to have to stick around and sit and watch videos about what's appropriate and what's not. The 3 helicopter escapees. Remember those guys we talked about a week ago? They caught them. Yeah, they caught them over the weekend, hanging out in a really expensive condo. It's like, that's a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah.
It absolutely is a made-for-TV movie. I guess these guys were like drug dealers, right? And if you don't know the story, they flew a helicopter right into the prison yard, which I'm wondering how they were even able to do that, and nobody gets off a shot. I was always under the impression that, like, the maximum security prisons, that they had armed guards, like, up in the turrets up there that would, if anything went sideways.
Shoot and then ask questions?
Right, exactly. I mean, I think, isn't that, because, like, to be quite honest.
That's how it is in the movies.
Well, quite honestly, that was a job I was interested in.
Yeah.
Because I liked what they stood for. But it was one of those things where this helicopter flew in, they landed, these guys were in the prison yard, they got on the helicopter, and they just flew away. I think they hijacked the helicopter from, like, a tourist thing, like where you fly around, you look at waterfalls or whatever, and they made that guy fly it in, so maybe that's why they didn't shoot, because maybe they realized they had
a hostage?
An innocent hostage in there. But they just found them all hanging out in this condo in Quebec.
Crazy.
I wonder if they will make a movie out of that. Now, that's one I would like to see. I would be interested in that. I don't know about the online dating deal because I've been with my wife for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people do online dating.
Mm-hmm. It's far more acceptable now. Well, it didn't used to be very acceptable.
Right. I get it wasn't acceptable. I still think that there's a little bit of, I don't know. I don't know the exact words I'm looking for. Like, for me, like if I found myself in the dating world, I guess that's probably where I would go.
Well, it's better than the bars.
Yeah, I don't even know where you would go because we've talked about this many, many times. The biggest single growing group of singles are 45 and older. You get to 45, you get divorced, or maybe you lose a spouse, or something happens in that window.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden you find yourself out in this whole new thing. Things have changed. Match.com for $5,000 will find you a lookalike, a doppelganger of your ex for you to date. Look at Alicia's face. She's just like, what?
Why would you want that?
That's creepy.
I think that they're appealing to the people who, because like when there's a breakup, usually one person wants out, one didn't know it was coming, and they're doing the begging, they want to stick around. I think if you're the one who did the kick into the curb, you're not interested in dating someone who looks like your ex. If you're the one who got kicked to the curb, then you might have an interest of dating someone who used to look like your ex.
I understand it in the sense of maybe you have a type, and so it would be easy to just kind of stick with the same type. But why would you pay $5,000?
It's a lot of dough.
Yeah.
Match.com is the company that would do it.
I know someone who recently got married, and they found their spouse on Match.com. She had gone through a divorce and then started using Match.com. And I'm not really, really tight with her, so I don't know all her stories and everything. But yeah, she found her current husband on Match.com.
I wonder if there's someone listening who's done that. Our phone number here is 503-225-0860. We'll give you anonymity, if you're not comfortable. I'm just curious. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just curious on how it works you might be helping out a lot of our listeners as well. They're probably in the same boat. Our phone number is 503-225-0860. If you maybe you made your match. I don't know if it was Match.com. It doesn't necessarily have to be Match.com. And you
don't they have one for farmers?
Well, I saw one that I saw a commercial the other day for, is it over 50 or over 60 or something like that, where people find their match later in life. goldenyears.com. I don't know. It was a different set of dating circumstances. 503-225-0860 is our number. Matter of fact, that's how we found John Windus to do the news. We found him on
LonelyNewsPeople.com.
We found him on
We
news.com.
talked him down to $100 that we paid for it.
Well, I appreciate it, and it has been a love connection. So, John, what's coming up in the news?
Well, you might avoid the Ross Island Bridge right now. Report of a man in the water there. Nervous driver tips Portland police and the canine helper to his big stash. And in Portland's Woodstock neighborhood, another outbreak of tire vandalism. It's not good. That plus Coin 6 weather coming up in a few minutes.
David Gartenstein-Ross, he is a longtime contributor to our show. He's an expert in terrorist radicalization. He's from Ashland, Oregon. He really will probably be able to make sense of what is going on in Iraq, and we will chat with him next here on AM 860 KPAM. 1035 AM 860 KPAM, Terry Boyd's World. It's good to welcome back our old friend David Gartenstein-Ross. He helped us through all of the stuff with the chemical weapons when it was when that was going down in Syria. David, you are an expert in terrorist radicalization. You're from Ashland, Oregon. Help us make sense of what's going on in Iraq, because if my memory serves me last year when we were talking to you about Syria, you warned us that if we don't handle things correctly, all hell is going to break loose in the Middle East, and it appears that it is.
Well, I'm not going to claim prescience on that one, in that there we're looking at possibly intervening in Syria. But at this point, what we have is a group that used to be known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq that's mounted a tremendous comeback. And with their lightning offensive, they were able to take multiple cities starting just about a couple of weeks ago. And you have multiple factions that are involved, not only ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, but also former Baathists, Sunni tribesmen, even groups that used to be part of the anti-Al-Qaeda awakening. And this has a lot of countries nervous, not just the United States, but Iran, neighboring countries, because of the very destructive potential of this takeover of territory.
David, I've been asking this question, and nobody seems to really want to tackle it. I don't know if you will. When ISIS said that they're not stopping at Baghdad, they want to fly their flag in Tehran, that made me nervous, because to me that signals they're looking for nuclear capability. Am I right on that assumption?
Well, it's an interesting question, but the fact is they'd have a great difficulty capturing Iran. I mean, Iran is a majority Shia state. This is a vehemently anti-Shia group. And they'll meet with incredible resistance. They can't simply capture the government and decapitate it very quickly in Tehran. I mean, a more alarming scenario in terms of nuclear weapons is really Pakistan, where you've had a roiling fundamentalist movement and a government that is suffering from incapacity, an insurgency that's been pushing back against the government in multiple points in the country. I think that is a legitimate set of concerns with respect to a nuclear program. For ISIS trying to get it to Iran, I'm going to chalk that up as being much more rhetoric and something that isn't really a realistic possibility.
David Gartenstein-Ross is who we're chatting with. He is an expert on terrorist radicalization. David, let me ask you, maybe you can break this down in the most simplistic form, because I guess at the most simplistic form, we really have two, if not more, of our enemies of the United States, who are really fighting amongst themselves. Why is it that we need to get involved again?
Well, that's one of the reasons why our involvement has been so very minimal thus far, because there are multiple people who want to push back against ISIS's advance, not just Iran, but also the state of Iraq. You have Shia militias showing up to try to defend Baghdad against ISIS's advance. That's an important dynamic, and that's one reason why the U.S. believes that it has breathing space. With respect to why we should care, though, I mean, out of simple self-interest, the fact that ISIS just destroyed between 25 and 50% of Iraq's refining capabilities, oil refining capabilities, means that we'll be feeling some of the pain at the pump. Also, if you have this cycle of instability spilling out into more countries, at some point it really does start to affect U.S. interests. You already have Syria absolutely bleeding. Now Iraq is as well, and we're certainly concerned that it could go into Jordan or into Lebanon. There's multiple scenarios for destabilization spreading.
David, where was the greatest miscalculation? Because clearly there was a gigantic miscalculation somewhere along this path. Where, in your opinion, as someone who's an expert in the Middle East, where was that biggest miscalculation?
It's really early to say because not all the facts are before us. More will trickle out over time. What I would look to, though, is ISIS on January 1st of this year launched another lightning offensive. It captured the cities of Fallujah and Ramadi and has succeeded in holding Fallujah since January the 1st. What I would look to is, was the U.S. government making contingency plans come January 1st for what it might do if ISIS continued to advance? And I don't know the answer, but to me that's the critical question as to where there might have been a mistake or miscalculation or failure to plan.
In your opinion, should we have stayed in Iraq?
I don't see that staying in Iraq would have prevented this from happening if we left behind a small contingency force. At some point, we had to get out of the country. I think there's multiple things we can run through, I suppose, with respect to criticisms of the Obama administration's withdrawal, and which had been planned, of course, by the Bush administration before them. But the notion that we could have kept troops and stopped this from happening, I don't see that it would have come at an acceptable cost. And it's also unclear to me that we would have been able to reach a status of forces agreement that would prevent U.S. troops from being prosecuted in Iraqi court, which for us was a red line. We didn't want our troops to face prosecution in that country.
David, do you see Baghdad standing or falling?
It's not going to fall in a ground advance. I think what we should look for is the potential for an unconventional assault on Baghdad. For example, ISIS trying to provoke Western Baghdad Sunni enclaves to rise up against the Iraqi government. We should also look for the possibility of suicide bombers being dispatched into Baghdad to cause chaos with the goal of decapitating the Iraqi government. But it's not going to be a conventional force where they simply take Baghdad. There are too many troops reinforcing Baghdad, too many Shia militias who are very professionalized in and of themselves.
David, did ISIS have outside help in getting as organized as they are? Because it appears that these guys are a very well-oiled machine.
They certainly had help in this case from multiple other factions within Iraq. This isn't just ISIS that's taken this ground. Rather, they've aligned with Sunni tribes. They've aligned with other Sunni armed factions. Even al-Qaeda remnants are part of the offensive. ISIS was expelled from al-Qaeda back in February for being insubordinate. So they're aligning with others, but in terms of outside help from another state, no, they didn't have a state military or others help them to get organized as a fighting unit.
Well, David, I certainly appreciate your time today. As always, you make a very complicated situation at least palatable for us everyday people. So thank you very much for the breakout. David Gartenstein-Ross, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Always a pleasure joining you.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, he really does know that area. And I just having him say they're not going to be able to get into Iran, that it really is one of my biggest fears is nuclear weapons falling in the hands of al-Qaeda or ISIS or whatever the group is, because they hate us. They don't care. That's frightening, man. When that look, I agree. A lot of it was probably rhetoric when they were saying, oh, yeah, we're going to fly our flag in Tehran, but it definitely got my attention. And I don't pay a lot of attention to everything that goes on over there because I figured we were done. I figured we were out of there, and clearly we didn't take care of all the business we needed to take care of. I was reading an article yesterday. I think you'll find this interesting. It's about accidental inventions that changed the world. Where people are like working on one thing and then wait a second.
I bet you that happens a lot.
A lot more than you think. And where do you hear some of your favorite items that you grew up with or that you use on a daily basis, what they were originally designed to do? We'll get into that next here on AM 860 KPAM. 1047, it's AM 860 KPAM, Terry Boyd's World. About half an hour ago, I told you Match.com for $5,000 will find you a doppelganger of your ex, someone who looks just like your ex to date. $5,000 is what it's going to cost you. I thought that was a little bit odd, and then
it's a little steep too.
Well, it led to an interesting conversation because everyone on this show, with the exception of John Windus, is married. So we've all been in long-term relationships, and the whole idea of online dating was long after I was in a relationship with my wife. Rick from Portland, you recently got married. You met your wife online. Take us through the process.
Well, yes, I did recently get married, and I met my wife off of an internet dating site. And that was one site that worked well for me. I tried some others, didn't have as good luck. And,
when you didn't have good luck, is that because people lie in their profiles? And I'm not trying to make a joke. I'm really trying to get to the root of it, because I read an article like my age group, 45 and older, is the single biggest group of new singles that are going to be jumping into the dating world. Do you fall into that category, Rick?
Definitely. I'm a little older than that now. I was divorced for almost 10 years. And did some dating, did a dating service, but then I tried online, and I was surprised at how many people maybe exaggerate, or the picture might be 10 or 20 years old.
I was going to ask you if that was the case. Yeah, glamour shot from 1984.
Yeah.
Well,
How willing were you to look at the profiles that didn't seem to exaggerate? I mean, do people almost need to exaggerate just to make sure that they get eyeballs on their profiles?
Good question.
Well, not for me. My whole approach in my own profile was to be honest. Wanting to meet someone, starting out being dishonest, it's never going to work. So why even put up an old picture or say you like going to the ballet if you really don't? So for me, I was just honest. And in return, I feel like I got honest people back.
Did you write something down that said, don't pick socks up off the floor, drop clothes wherever I'm walking? I mean, was it that honest, or was it, how honest were you really?
I was honest on the positive side. Things I like to do, things I want to do, what I'm looking for, a recent picture.
How long did it take before you met in person? Because I'm sure you chatted online first, correct?
I think a couple, 3 weeks, just because of work schedules. Referring to my wife, who we did just get married 2 weeks ago. So we met 3.5 years ago online and dated for a while. And then we became, I guess you'd say, boyfriend, girlfriend, although it sounds funny at this age. And it just grew into a real relationship, which is what I wanted. And, I've got some funny stories from online dating. I'll save those. But I'm happy that I met the woman of my dreams. She's awesome. And, online dating facilitated that. I never would have met her otherwise because we don't run in the same social circles. So to me, it really worked.
Now see, that's really interesting. We're just talking with Rick from Portland, who, by the way, congratulations, 2 weeks ago, got married to his wife, who he met online. Match.com is putting out a thing right now for $5,000. You can date someone who looks like your ex. I say if that's what you're looking for, then you were the one who got kicked to the curb. If you did the kicking, you're not interested in dating someone who looks like your ex.
But you might have a type. I get that
maybe,
part.
But for $5,000 to find, I already know what my type is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to pay you $5,000 to find my type. The very first time you tried online dating, did it seem weird on some levels?
To me?
Yeah,
Rick?
yeah, to you, Rick.
Oh, yeah, it seems sort of unnatural in a way. There was this stigma with meeting online. But the way I look at it is like you got to meet somebody somewhere, a bar, a dance hall, a party, a wedding. What's wrong with online? It's just like a big virtual room, and there's just people in there. Some people you want to talk to, some you don't.
That's an interesting way of putting it out there. Did you still have the same butterflies? Because, anytime you go on a first date, there is this crazy excitement about it that almost leads at times to awkwardness, for lack of a better term. Like, you probably never knock the water over on the table if you're at dinner, but there's a good chance of it happening on that first date, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the only one who did stupid things like that. And just by your chuckle, and you know what I'm talking about. Were those butterflies still there?
With meeting my wife, I was excited. I wouldn't say butterflies. I had done a fair amount of online dating already, so my expectations were kind of low. I I had this theory: if you keep your expectations low, you're not going to be as disappointed. And for me, it worked. It was a very sort of lighthearted approach, and it kept it fun and light without having these expectations on myself or the other person. But when I met my now wife, I was amazed. She was honest like I was honest. She looked like what her picture looked like. I felt like I'd met somebody that had similar values as me. And, whether you meet in a bar, a wedding, or online, I think you have to line up your values. It's not how you meet, it's what you share after you meet.
Rick, how many other people did you have to date before you met your wife?
Over a 5-year period, a couple dozen, 3 dozen maybe. And I wouldn't call it dating, I would call it meeting, because I belong to an organization that would introduce you to people. I don't want to name the name, but you can find them anywhere in flight magazines. And that was okay, but you're meeting a complete stranger. You really didn't know anything about him. That was awkward. That's when I got butterflies.
Yeah.
But with the online dating, at least you had some idea of who you're going to meet. You had something to talk about, kind of knew what they looked like. And so there was some familiarity already.
It was interesting. Right when you gave the number, there was like a little bit of a clip. And I'm not kidding you. For the record, you said a couple of dozen, but it sounded to me like you said a couple of thousand. And I went, what? That's an awful lot of people, man. I don't know.
Do I get a prize for that?
Yeah,
a credit card bill from all the drinks you have to buy.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, hey, Rick, for people listening right now that are in that same window like you were, it sounds to me like you would recommend it.
Absolutely. Do it. If you want to meet somebody, do it. How else are you going to meet them? People say, you can meet at a bar or a wedding or whatever. Really, how many bars you going to? How many weddings you going to? If you really want to meet somebody, put yourself out there and just be honest. If you can't be who you are, then if the person you meet doesn't even know who you are, how's it going to work? Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
You just got to put yourself out there honestly. And from there, it'll all work out. It'll be okay.
Hey, Rick, just for the sake of wrapping this up, when you and your wife now sit down on the couch, do you communicate laptop to laptop, or do you actually talk to each other?
Well, we actually sat on the couch and changed our Facebook status from in relationship to married at the same time. It was a hoot. We were just cracking up because, we're in that 45-plus age group. And so when we did it, we just got a kick out of it. And then all the responses, all the likes, all the comments.
That's great.
It was a lot of fun. It was fun.
Well, congratulations, Rick. Thanks for sharing your story with us, and thanks for listening, man. We appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Take care, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, you don't get to change that status on Facebook very often.
Well, at least you hope not.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes when you're looking to change that status, you change your economic status as well. John Windows is in the newsroom. He has today's biggest news stories.
Terry, you'll want to pay attention to this. A thrilling ought draw at the World Cup just moments ago. Costa Rica and England, ought. Thrilling.
Awesome.
One road tax meeting down, 1 to go. Why not go to a vote? We'll ask the mayor's office. And final touches being put on the historic Columbia River Highway. Hoping to get that open today. That plus your Coin 6 forecast. We'll try to chase the clouds away. Let you know about it in a few minutes.
Well, we finally found Jim Redden. He was at the street fee meeting. He's going to give us some insight next here on AM 860 KPAM. 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 Here on AM 860